right, a very busy week from Washington to New York to, sadly, Nashville. And doing something about school shootings has been very much on the mind of Michigan's 7th District Congresswoman, Democrat Elissa Slotkin, who's my first guest this morning. Congresswoman, good to have you back on the program. We'll get to the gun legislation you're proposing in a minute. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you for your reaction first to this indictment situation. Historically, extremely important. It could end up being extremely important personally for Donald Trump. I'm wondering what it really means or does for sort of our cultural and political divide in America. Does it move the needles?
I think we have to wait to see what actually happens with it. I mean, obviously, it's historic just to have a former president indicted, but we have a legal system. No one is above it, and that legal system has to bear out in order for us to know someone's truth or innocence or guilt. So I have no special knowledge on the case. I'm going to let it play out. It's going to be done in front of America, so there'll be judge and jury, and we'll see.
Campaign finance law is a tricky thing that trips up people all the time.
Yeah.
Charlie LaDuff pointed out in a column this past week, the difference here is that somebody went after Donald Trump. Nobody went after Gretchen Whitmer for her private jet flight to Florida way back when, and the trouble that she had in accounting for that. Is it selective prosecution?
I think that when you're a public figure, you open yourself up to extra scrutiny, and people are looking from all sides what you're doing, and that's part of the job. So Donald Trump was our president. People are going to look at what he did, and for me, that's just part and parcel of being a person in public.
Let's move to the legislation that you were proposing this past week. You appeared in Washington with survivors from both Oxford and Michigan State. Yeah. You've spent an awful lot of time thinking, obviously, about school shootings, but I think a lot of people wonder whether we can possibly try to legislate our way out of this horrible American problem.
Yeah. Look, I think we have to try, right? I mean, we have to decide as a country if we care about the #1 killer of children under 21. That's the decision at the table. We can debate about which law makes the most sense, but let's decide we're going to do something about it, like we did in the 80s when car accidents were the #1 killer of children. There was no car seats. There was no seat belts. We made a decision as a society to study it, to understand it, and to go after it, both in law, but also in our culture. And that's what I think we need to be doing right now. And I think frankly, Oxford, but then the Michigan State shooting here in Michigan, I can feel the change on the ground, right? 50,000 students, 100,000 parents, hundreds of thousands of family members, and all the alumni who have all been at that union, who all felt terrorized by watching that manhunt, that horrible series of events. The number of calls I got from Republican elected leaders, sportsmen, hunters, people who are very serious about their Second Amendment rights, as they have the right to be, but who also said, please protect my children in their schools, in their sanctuary. So I can feel the ground shifting. That's why we're seeing, I think, things moving forward in Lansing, and why I'm not going to stop at the national level.
I have a hard time, for instance, let's start with the Michigan State shoot. I have a hard time finding the law that would have tidied all of that up and taken and made that not happen.
Yeah.
If we had a red flag law, even his father didn't believe that the shooter was at that point in his life. I mean, it is hard to find. This is a very, very complex matter.
It is, but so are car accidents. And it's not like children don't still die in car accidents. It's horrible. It still happens, but it's not the #1 killer of children. And so it's not to say we're going to end all gun violence and there's one law that's going to be the magic bullet. That's not the real world. The real world is making a commitment to do something about it. And I introduced a piece of legislation last week specifically tailored to the very instance of the Michigan State shooter, right? He had been convicted of a gun crime, earlier, pled it down to a misdemeanor. When it went down to a misdemeanor, that meant the minute he's done with probation, he can go and legally buy a gun. That's what he did. He went to Dick's Sporting Goods, legally bought a gun. Right. The law I put forward last week says no, even a misdemeanor. The minute you're done with serving your sentence, you still have a 3-year ban on buying a weapon. That would have taken us into the zone of the Michigan State shooting. So it's not that any one law is going to do it. It's just, are we going to decide that it's a real problem and we're going to do something about it, or are we going to pretend it's not a problem?
Of course, the freedom to drive without a seatbelt is not enshrined in the Constitution, and it didn't take very long at all for Republicans in Washington to push back.
Yep.
And you are trying to operate in a U.S. House of Representatives that is controlled by the Republican Party.
Yeah.
What do you feel like your chances really are?
Well, you know, it's interesting. We had this press conference to announce these bills. We had a survivor of the Oxford shooting. We had a survivor of the MSU shooting. We had a bunch of other survivors behind us. And they asked the same question. And then I had to go and vote. And I walked directly there to the House of Representatives floor, and a Republican came up to me very quietly, pulled me aside, and he said, "I'm interested in your bills. Can we have a quiet conversation about your bills?" There are still some moderate, reasonable Republicans who understand that the ground is changing on this issue, and they don't want to be caught on the wrong side. And I appreciate that. That takes bravery, and we should reward that bravery.
It is telling that it has to be a quiet conversation,
Fine.
right?
You've got to start somewhere.
The other thing that's been put forward, Ed Markey, part of this too, was trying to get to a real study of why this happens. There's an old adage in Congress that if you don't want to solve a problem, then immediately set about creating a committee to look into why it happens. We understand why. It's almost always a young, disaffected, disconnected male, an outcast. We do kind of understand how these things. There are some similarities that we do understand, and we should know how to solve those, right?
Yeah, but there is a legal prohibition from letting the CDC study gun violence. It was an amendment called the Dickey Amendment put forward by the NRA and others so that the CDC can't study it as a public health issue. So of all the leading causes of death and the top 30 reasons why people die in this country, it's the least studied. We do put more money in the CDC to studying sepsis than we do to gun violence. So it's not that a study is going to solve everything. But again, my peers in Congress will come up to me and say, "Elissa, this bill or that bill isn't going to solve the problem." Okay, so let's understand it a bit. Let's understand the root causes. Why are these profile of these young men always seem to be the same? What can we do to get in front of it? That to me is a worthy cause, and certainly as worthy as studying sepsis.
If we continue to focus on guns, that's where we seem to get at loggerheads between the two parties, though, right? I mean, are there other things that we're just not fully understanding and addressing? I always liken it to the drug problem. If we dry up the drug supply tomorrow, we do not do away with the drug problem.
No.
We still have a bunch of people who need drugs. The real problem here is we have a bunch of people who want to kill a lot of people at one time.
Yep. So look, we all know that it's guns plus mental illness, right? Mental health issues of some kind. Lots of other countries around the world have a real problem like we do with mental health issues. You look at the UK or you look at any European country, but it's the combination with guns that turns it into deadly, deadly things for our children. And no other country in the world has the problem with school shootings that we have. So it's a combination of the two. But again, I'm open to any ideas. I'm open to thoughtful, creative ideas that have nothing to do with guns, that have to do with mental health. But let's come to the table. Let's negotiate like adults to protect children.
It is so sadly, uniquely an American problem.
It is.
We see some mass shootings elsewhere, but nothing like what we have here, 130 so far this year. Lastly, I just wanted to make sure that we hit on how big is the debt ceiling debate problem that we are heading toward, which we've done this many times. This one suddenly feels more acute.
Yeah, I think it is more acute. We're heading towards the debt ceiling. Probably this summer we would go into default, and that's a really big deal, right? Our credit rating gets lowered, and what that means for everybody watching, for the average American, is interest rates go up. So people are already complaining about interest rates on, when you're going to go get a house or a car, they would go up. So, and it's tragic for our credit rating, the strongest country in the world, to have our credit rating lowered. So what we need is responsible adults to put forward what they want to do on the budget. The president put forward his budget on March 9th. My Republican colleagues will not come to the table and say what they want to cut.
Not publicly yet, anyway.
Not publicly.
Yes.
So I'd love to see that. That's how we can have a real conversation.
Congresswoman Slotkin, always good to have you on the program.
Thanks
really
for
appreciate
having
you being here. We'll bring in the roundtable right after this. This is Flashpoint on Local 4.